Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you are very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. Usually, when theatre historians get really excited about seeing a printed, or even more uncommonly, a manuscript text by William Shakespeare, that item, that text, is going to date from the 16th or early 17th century. Encountering a first folio or an example of William Shakespeare's own handwriting are things that are almost guaranteed to get us into a bit of a tizzy. It is, however, less likely that a complete works from, say, 1970 will elicit a similar response. However, as I'm sure we all know, the history and value of a book, or indeed of any artefact, does not begin and end at the moment of its creation. Rather, its story continues to be shaped by the journey, or the journeys, that it goes on through time. In the case of one copy of a Complete Works of William Shakespeare, published in 1970, that copy's journey led to it being one of the key exhibits in a 2012 British Museum exhibition. That exhibition was called Shakespeare, Staging the World. At the point this exhibition was running, I was neck deep in my doctoral studies and, frankly, could scarcely see the wood for the trees. This exhibition reignited my passion. It refueled my imagination for early modern drama and for some of the work that I was doing at that time. And now, 12 years later, and frankly, where has the time gone, I still think of the exhibits that I saw there. And one of them has stuck with me so clearly that I want to talk about it today in this video. And so, without further ado, let's take a look at the Robben Island Bible. Robben Island is located in Table Bay. It is just off the coast of South Africa and north of Cape Town. For centuries, this island was used as a place of banishment and imprisonment. It has a long history of holding political prisoners, who were frequently dissidents that opposed colonial rule and apartheid. As time went on, it was designated for use as a maximum security prison. It became notorious for its harsh conditions and cruelty. Hard labour, violence, and scarcity of food were the standard. Today, it is a museum, the Robben Island Museum. The website for this museum explains that, quote, "The harsh conditions and inhumane, ruthless treatment of prisoners continued in the 1900s. Between 1962 and 1966, prisoners were subjected to physical abuse, given poor food, and were not allowed to participate in sport, recreational, cultural, and other such activities. A mass hunger strike in 1966 by 1,000 prisoners caressed the tides of change, and the gradual improvement of conditions surfaced. Conditions regressed again under Colonel Badenhorst, a commanding officer in charge of the island between 1970 and 1972. Warders often punished prisoners by withdrawing their meal tickets, which meant they had to go hungry on those days. It was common practice for the warders to beat the prisoners while they worked. When physical abuse was no longer allowed, the authorities and their warders resorted to actions that would have negative psychological effect on the prisoners, such as interrupting or preventing academic education, censoring letters and visits, denying access to news and newspapers. For example, in 1969, all postgraduate study was stopped, and prisoners were prohibited from including history, law, and political science in their undergraduate curricula. To go off on a slight tangent, although I will argue that it is very related, in previous videos, and certainly in my live streams, I have talked about my concerns over the seeming concerted devaluation of the humanities, of subjects like history, philosophy, literature. Today, these topics are being devalued. Individuals are being discouraged from studying them as they will not get them a job in the future. Essentially, they're being frightened out of looking into them. In apartheid South Africa, people who were campaigning against that system of oppression are being prevented from studying history, law, and political science. Arguably, the very academic tools they would need to best challenge the system that was oppressing them. I don't see either of these things as being coincidental. From 1975, visits were restricted to first-degree relatives only. Prisoners were given minimal clothing, with African prisoners getting short pants. They were not provided with underwear. There were no beds, and prisoners had to sleep on thin mats on a cement floor. Meet civil rights campaigner, freedom fighter, and outspoken opponent of the system of apartheid in South Africa, Sonny Venkatranam. When he was arrested, tortured, and ultimately imprisoned on Robben Island in 1972, under the auspices of the wide-reaching Terrorism Act that had been passed in 1967, he knew that he had years of incarceration ahead of him. He was also destined to be one of the so-called single-cell prisoners, meaning he would be afforded far less contact with other inmates and would also be confined to his cell for much longer periods. It was going to be a lonely existence. Sonny Venkatranam's hopes were reportedly raised by the thought that the complete works of Shakespeare he had acquired would be allowed to act as his companion, his source of distraction during his long incarceration. Before long, though, his copy was confiscated. However, that was not to be the end of it. Ashwin Desai, writing for The Wire, provides the following quotation from Mr. Venkatranam. Quote, "And one Sunday morning, a warder tells me the Anglican Church is here. I tell him, I'm an Anglican, you know, but I left my Bible in the storeroom. He takes out his keys, opens the storeroom, and I pick out my book. The Complete Works of Shakespeare. The problem is, how do we hide it? It's a bare room. So what I did was that. Again, providentially, it was Diwali, and my parents sent me greeting cards. So I took those cards, cut them up, and pasted them with porridge over the covers of the book. The warders would come and ask me, what's that? And I said, it's my Bhagavad Gita, my Bible. They did not touch it. At first glance, it is these brightly coloured Diwali cards that you notice. On the spine, the section of card has been partially ripped away to reveal this text's true contents. As we can see, this copy appears to be very well worn, always a good sign that a book has been often opened, and I would argue, frequently much loved. This complete works, though, did not stay in the hands of just the one inmate of Robben Island, because in addition to providing a source of distraction, arguably companionship, for Mr. Venkatranam, this copy also offered him a way to find and forge connections with those who had been incarcerated alongside him. Between 1975 and 1978, his copy of the complete works was circulated amongst his fellow prisoners, with a request that they might select their favourite passages from this text and then mark those passages with their signature and with the date they signed. This copy would pass through the hands of more than 30 people, many of whom left their mark upon it. When I saw this copy at the British Museum in 2012, it was open to show a section of Act 2, Scene 2 from Julius Caesar. The marked passage being spoken by Caesar, reading as follows. Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. Of all the wonders that I yet have heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. The signature beside this particular selection belongs to Nelson Mandela, and it is dated to the 16th of December 1977. Nelson Mandela had arrived at the Robben Island prison in 1964. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. He would be incarcerated for 27 years in total, although not all of those were served on Robben Island, because he was moved to Pollsmoor in 1982. He was finally released in 1990. 3 years later, in 1993, Nelson Mandela was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And then, from the following year, 1991, until 1997, he served as the President of South Africa. The sentiment of this speech, about the value of courage above all things, even in the face of death, connects, I would argue, in many ways, with Nelson Mandela's own perseverance and bravery in the face of real dangers. While this is the passage that he marked as his favourite, this should, perhaps, not be read as him aspiring or even claiming to be Caesar-like in all aspects, as I would say a potential tyrant would presumably have been an ill-fitting role model for Nelson Mandela to seek to connect himself and his legacy to. Over the years, the Robben Island Bible has been loaned to a number of other institutions. In 2013, for example, the Folger hosted the exhibition A Book Behind Bars, the Robben Island Bible. A section of the Folger's website, their Folgerpedia, provides greater detail on the contents of the Robben Island Bible, its signatories, and the excerpts selected by them. I am going to leave this really helpful resource linked, but I'm also going to show the various signed excerpts on screen. Please do feel free to pause if you want to give them an in-depth look, and I would certainly love to know if any of them stand out to you in particular. Are any of these sections your favourites? And when you consider the shared cause that led to the various signatories' imprisonment, does that perhaps affect your reading of the texts that were chosen and why they were chosen? One man, named Billy Nair, favoured this section of The Tempest. He signed his name near to Caliban's speech. The authors of the Folgerpedia point out that, quote, among the 34 signatures in the Robben Island Shakespeare, Nair's seems most strikingly resonant with his own imprisonment. Caliban the dispossessed, incarcerated upon an outcrop of rock and sand and heather that is rightfully his, is subjected to tortures and forced into slave labour. Perhaps Nair registered Caliban's claim simply as his own, and as that of all the dispossessed inhabitants of South Africa. Puck's apologetic epilogue from A Midsummer Night's Dream was also selected and signed, as was this speech by Shylock about the shared humanity of people, regardless of the things that might be used to try and divide them. Also signed were 3 sections from As You Like It. This one, and this one. 2 from Twelfth Night, here and here. 2 from Richard II, 1 and 2. 2 from Henry V, this one and this one. 3 from Julius Caesar. That includes the part that was selected and signed by Nelson Mandela, in addition to this one and this one. There were 2 passages from Macbeth, here and here. 3 from Hamlet, 1, 2, and 3. 2 from King Lear, and 1 from Antony and Cleopatra, on screen now. Of course, the complete works do feature the sonnets, which are also among some of the selected texts. The sonnets with signatures are as follows: Sonnet 25, Sonnet 30. Sonnet 60 and 65 were signed by the same person. They were both signed by Neville Alexander. Sonnet 123 and Sonnet 140 were also selected as sections to be signed. Over time, the place of William Shakespeare's works in many nations became and continues to be a contested one. After all, these works and the assertions made about them, that they were an indicator, even a proof, of the superiority of British culture, formed an integral part of the British colonial toolkit. And so, some within former British colonies and their diasporas have argued for the total rejection of Shakespeare's works on this basis. Meanwhile, others assert the value of absorbing them, and or of attempting to decolonise the study and performance of them. For me, the Robben Island Bible is a vital touchstone or a reference point for trying to understand these conflicts and for engaging in these conversations. Because the Robben Island Bible is a complete works of Shakespeare that has been transformed into a site of protest and resistance. The signatories contained within it were the revolutionaries that would go on to change their nation. Dora Thornton, who was the curator of the exhibition that I went to see at the British Museum in 2012, is quoted as noting, "The book was used in the same way as the Bible has been used down the ages, as a constant reference for debating the moral issues of the day." So what do you think of the Robben Island Bible? Have you visited one of the exhibitions in which it was displayed? What do you think of the various sections of text that the inmates picked out? Does the history of this copy affect your view of the complete works today? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video. I'd also love it if you could pop an emoji or a social glyph in the comments too, because that will boost the engagement. And the more engagement video gets, the more YouTube say they share it out, which should help us to grow this lovely community. As we've been talking about Shakespeare and protest, I wonder which emoji you're going to pick. Is it going to be a quill, something theatrical, or maybe something about the protest and resistance, maybe even about incarceration? I look forward to seeing what you choose. You can also find me elsewhere on social media. I will leave links to the place you can find me on the internet in my description box. Please do follow me over on some or all of those so we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, why not share it with your friends? If you like my channel, let some pals know about it. You can tell me about this video in particular by hitting the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel. And if you think you are subscribed, now is a great time to check to make sure that YouTube hasn't cheekily and mysteriously unsubscribed you against your will. While you are there, checking, subscribing, maybe resubscribing, please do hit the bell icon that sits beside the subscribe button and then select all in the drop down that will appear, and that way YouTube allege that it will tell you when I've next uploaded, but also when I'll next be going live, which I do to talk about the history news, and I know you are not going to want to miss that. Of course, we have now got our failsafe. I've got a website. I will be linking it. It is www.katrinamarchant.com. If you go to the contact page of my website, you will find a box. If you put your email address in that box and hit send, that will add you to a mailing list, which will let me send you out a message once a week to let you know what I've been up to and also to give you the links for my content that you might want over the coming days. I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.